Right, everyone's got their cups of tea on the go. Everyone's got their headphones on, microphones plugged in. We've all remember to press record this time. So it's time to start with the Linux Voice podcast, Series 4, Episode 5. Welcome to the podcast, the Linux Voice podcast. I'm Andrew Gregory.
I'm Ben Everard.
I'm Graham Morrison.
And I'm Mike Saunders.
And in today's recording, we've got news. We've got the other things. We've got the halfway reminder, which we might pop in around the halfway point this time if we remember. We've got our discoveries or our finds. We may or may not have some neurons to vocalise. Stay tuned for that one. And we also have the results of our spooky, scary, futuristic voice of the masses. Come with me if you want to live. What now? Oh, also, we do a magazine called Linux Voice. And you can subscribe to that if you go to shop.linuxvoice.com. Many subscription options are there, which add to my workload when it's time to do the VAT return. Not that I'm complaining, obviously. Buy as many copies as you want.
Right, is it time for the news?
Let's go.
The news. All right, our first item of news this fortnight is that I don't have a cup of tea ready, and now I really regret it.
Oh,
We can wait.
fail.
I don't mind waiting.
No, I'll struggle nobly on. And, see if
I was
can
going to
get
suggest
through.
you could go while we do news, because that usually takes 20 minutes, and then thought, no.
Just carry my microphone
Yeah.
downstairs. I knew I should have got a wireless mic. Curse these metal wires.
Yeah, like One Direction, have those mics, that go down to our mouths.
Yeah,
Or Ed Sheeran.
indeed. Aren't those for dancing while you pretend to sing?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Right, so first up in real tech news this fortnight is Skynet has arisen and it's playing Go.
Awesome.
Yes, this is news that Google's AlphaGo computer artificial intelligence thingy has beaten one of the world's best Go players in a 5-game series, and it won 4-1. And it's not so much a surprise that a computer has beaten a human at Go, but it's more that it's happened so quickly. Go is sort of generally considered to be one of the harder games for a computer to play. It was the next big scalp after computers beat chess grandmasters and be the best in the world at chess. Go was the next target.
Could somebody concisely describe the simple rules of Go?
No.
No, I can't.
I can.
Can you?
Okay.
Yeah, Go is actually a game you can learn in about 2-3 minutes. It's really, really simple. You have a grid. You, Graham, have black pieces. I have white pieces. We place them on this grid and we try to surround each other's pieces to remove them or capture areas. So what makes the game so fascinating and open and while there are millions, billions of different combinations, is that you typically play on, I think it's a 19 by 19 board. So it's really, really big. So chess is massively more complicated than Go. But there's just so many permutations in Go. And I was reading about this engine that finally beat this player, and it's built on artificial intelligence, much more than, say, Deep Blue that beat Kasparov back in the day.
Right, so it's not simply a huge table of outcomes.
Not just that, no. I read that Deep Blue, when Deep Blue beat Kasparov, it was just brute forcing, working things out, and also it had a few openings programmed into it, whereas this Alpha, was a DeepMind AlphaGo, was actually a very interesting demonstration of artificial intelligence applied to a game that's super simple on the outside, but incredibly complicated to master.
Yeah, so the basic issue is, as you say, the number of permutations. So you can't just build a massive tree of outcomes. I think I'm right in saying, I remember the statistic that if you put a chess board on every atom in the universe, there'd still be more permutations in a single game of Go than in all the chess boards combined.
Right.
That's a brilliant comparison.
Yeah.
It's that much more. I might have got that wrong, But someone once told me, probably in a pub, that was true. So yeah, it's this challenge that there's so many options. So you just can't build a tree big enough because you literally could not create enough memory to go even more than a few steps of permutations into the future. And as far as I'm aware, it's still based on a sort of rough tree structure, but it has to be so heavily pruned, and that's where the AI comes in. I believe it's based on a neural network to prune the tree, basically, to make the searching manageable.
Does it have any kind of person? Does it take into account the previous games of the person you're playing?
According to Google, it doesn't. They said they just didn't have enough game. He's a professional Go player and all his games on file, but it was a few hundred, whereas AlphaGo needs a few million to train meaningfully. So it wasn't specifically tuned for him.
Right.
So, yeah. And it's one series against one player. That doesn't necessarily mean no human will beat it. And also, as it went with computers in chess, it sort of changed the game a little bit, playing against computers. So once the sort of top chess players saw how the computer played, they could modify their strategy to.
Or they could go to the toilet and cheat.
Yeah. So we'll probably will see AlphaGo get beaten, but probably only once or twice before it gets better.
I guess we'll talk about it later, but I find it completely staggering on two counts. Staggering because we know how many kind of computations a computer can make, that it's taken this long. But then more impressively that the human brain is capable of playing a game that is so challenging to the greatest computer mind on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should read too much into this, because the reason that Go is considered an interesting game is because it fits into that sort of gap that human brains find hard to manage. We're not good at processing large number of permutations, whereas computers are.
Yeah.
And that's why we find it interesting. It's a completely artificial situation that we've created that because it's hard, it falls into a category that's difficult for our minds to comprehend.
If it was a game about finding faces in a forest, we'd be better at the computer.
Exactly. So, yeah. Don't have to worry about AI-based sharpshooters just yet. Let's move on to Raspberry Pi news. Raspberry Pi 3 was released recently. This is a new board from Raspberry Pi Foundation. It's got a 64-bit ARM chip, same price as previous versions, so $35 for the Model B version. They've announced that they will be bringing out Model A and compute module for this, but not yet. They're still working on the guts of it. It's got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on board. Most of the rest remains unchanged, so still 1 gig of memory, still the same GPIO pins.
I mean, the best. Sorry, Mike. I was only going to say the best thing seems to be that from reading your feature, Ben, that's got into the issue we've just finished, that the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth now goes through a separate bus rather than through the USB bus, which is what the Ethernet still does. Yeah,
it does. And I don't know, there's certain categories of problems that this will affect, and the particular one is a NAS box. For regular sort of network access, to be honest, you're unlikely to be pushing the limits close enough for this to have a particular effect.
Well,
but if you
4K stuff on Kodi, lots of people use them for media players.
But you're not pushing stuff out through the USB bus then in that case. So every time I've used Kodi, I've been able to stream data in quickly enough. So it's only going to affect it if, I don't know, you actually have a bottleneck there.
Well, I use an external DAC with my Raspberry Pi Kodi setup.
In that case, that could, yeah. Have you had
it's sometimes a little bit flaky. It's certainly, struggles sometimes.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, if you happen to be using a USB device at the same time as the network, it can have an effect. I can't remember. I did actually do some speed tests on that, and I can't remember what the results were, but it was quite a bit faster. I mean, at the moment it's got the 64-bit chip, but there's no. I believe I'm still correct in saying that there's no 64-bit distros available for it. So we'll have to wait and see how much that affects it.
I'm waiting for the Raspberry Pi 3.11 for work groups.
Someone asked about the 3.14. and they said they wouldn't do that.
So you were guessing earlier on before we started the recording that one of the things they may do in the future is add more RAM. I remember in the old versions that it was impossible, that the way that the RAM was bound to the SoC made it impossible to add any more RAM. Does the new architecture make that more feasible?
They actually changed that a few devices ago. I'm trying to remember on which one. I think it might have been the Raspberry Pi 2 was the first to have off-board RAM.
Oh, okay. I didn't realise.
I mean, to be honest, from an electronic point of view, I'm not completely sure what chips are available, but surely you must be able to get more than 1 gig of RAM in a compatible format. I mean, this is a reasonably modern chip. I mean, the issue with the first Raspberry Pi is it was a pretty archaic chip, so no one bothered building new chips to support it. Whereas, this is, it's an ARM V8. It's pretty new.
Yeah.
So you must be able to get more than 1 gig of RAM. And it's always the thing that you're looking for the biggest performance upgrade for the least amount of work.
Yeah.
And previously that was to improve the processor, and now it's definitely the RAM.
I would love to see eSATA and a decoupled gigabit Ethernet.
But I really don't think you'll ever see those on a Raspberry Pi, at least not for quite a long time, purely because they're completely pointless to the target market.
Yeah. And there are plenty of other Chinese boards that do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point in chasing every use case. The Raspberry Pi's always been great because it's very focused on what it does, and it does it well. And eSATA and gigabit just aren't needed. The
other thing that really impresses me is their marketing and the way they drive up. I mean, this event that you went to, didn't it? The Shard in London, which is like this great big glass building.
Yeah, they have these absolutely delicious tiny eclairs, red velvet eclairs.
What, raspberry coloured?
They had some pink fruity stuff in. Would that have been raspberry flavouring?
It might have been, but if it was, they didn't make a big thing of it. To be honest, I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It might have been raspberry, but I wouldn't like to say it definitely wasn't. It's one of those various other berries I don't really know what it tastes like loganberry or...
It would only have been some sort of long chain ether... ester rather thing.
Is it well attended, and are they kind of the cream of the UK tech journalist crop?
It seemed a bit of an odd mix, to be honest, because I mean there was the annoying chap from the BBC, Rory.
Oh yeah,
he was there doing his video thing, being annoying. I don't know why I find him annoying. He just grates me for some reason.
Because there's very little content in what he says.
Yeah,
did he keep using the phrase computer viruses?
Yeah, this is his one report a year that's not about an Apple product. It was. There's some chaps from Microsoft there. I had to. He was trying to show me this Windows 10 IoT thing, and it kept crashing. And I tried hard not to laugh, but I couldn't. Who else was there? It's like magazines I'd never heard of, like electronics sourcing thing, which I guess because the event was put on by Element 14, not the Raspberry Pi Foundation.
Right.
And Element 14 are the guys who build it and do all low-level stuff for it, and make quite a few of the add-ons. So there were quite a few people there from a wide range of magazines.
It seems to work for them. I mean, there's a huge onslaught of, in fact, I remember, was it the Register leaked it like over the weekend before?
Well, it's been leaked in a few places because, the American people, the FCC, had to give approval for the Raspberry Pi, and for some reason because of the wireless and Bluetooth.
Yeah.
And for some reason that became public, even though it shouldn't have become public yet.
Yeah. I guess if you search for it, if you know where to look, you can find it.
Well, it's like you can get approval and ask for a certain amount of privacy.
I'm sure Apple pushed that forward.
Yeah. Obviously, people like Apple managed to keep it secret, or at least moderately so, for their devices.
It seems to be working for the Raspberry Pi Foundation. 8.5 million Pis or whatever it is.
Yeah. Depending on who you speak to, somewhere around 8 million.
Biggest UK computer.
Yeah. This is the second time they've announced that. The first time it turned out they got it wrong. There's some,
I mean, you could, if you don't include ARM, I suppose. I mean, ARM really is
It also depends on what's a computer.
Yeah.
Is the Raspberry Pi 3 a different computer to the Raspberry Pi 2?
Yeah.
Don't know. You could argue
Yeah.
about that amongst yourselves.
Commodore 128, same as 64. Not really.
Who knows? Right. Let's move on to other Linux related news, and this is the return of Firefox to Debian. At least that's how I've written it down. This isn't actually quite correct. It would be more correct to say that Iceweasel is being renamed Firefox in Debian, because they're not getting rid of all their Debian specific stuff. They've just agreed to put down the handbags and not slap against Mozilla so much, and they're just changing the branding on Iceweasel to be Firefox. This all started about 10 years ago when Debian wanted to put in their own patches because they support all sorts of crazy architectures, and there's a few things that Firefox didn't do well. So they brought in a load of patches, and Firefox said, well, that's not Firefox anymore, you've got to change the branding, etc. So they renamed it Iceweasel, put in a new logo, and said, fine, we'll do what we want with it. And so it continued for about 10 years. And now they're renaming it Firefox and using the official branding, even with their unofficial patches.
That's good. I did read, this isn't actually, it's related, but also I don't know how true this is, but there was a post I read by an employee of Mozilla saying how it really was at the foundation, and how the foundation seems to be in kind of moral and mental and intellectual turmoil over its future and what it actually should be doing, with none of the engineers agreeing with any of the management decisions. And it sounded true to me, especially when you see things like Brendan Eich and other things happening, and Mozilla's kind of lost a direction, and I really worry for the future of Firefox and the free web.
Yeah, it's always difficult for a foundation because they don't, if it's a company, you have a very specific thing, you make a profit. But what is Firefox's or Mozilla's goal? I mean, supposedly it's to make the web a better place, but that's very flowery.
Yeah, I mean, the post itself was dealing with the marketing people wanting the advertising tiles put in, and they've put an awful lot of effort into that, then dropped it. And the same with Firefox OS, which you must say, I mean, if this is charity money, it was probably a huge waste of resources. And also badly organized. I mean, even at Mobile World Congress or something, there was a big Firefox OS stand, only for it to be dropped almost within 24 hours.
Yeah, and it's hard because what they've got, there's only so much development that you can put into a web browser.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fundamentally wrong that they're pursuing other goals, because I think these are genuinely areas that an open provider can improve.
I don't think it would be fundamentally wrong if Firefox was a storming success, but it's market share percentage is dropping and dropping. I found that it's actually getting worse. I upgraded to, I think, 45 recently, and for some reason, just viewing YouTube videos in HTML5, CPU just went through the roof. I had to downgrade.
Yeah.
And I found this just little bugs and issues. It's great that they're looking into different things like Rust and even an operating system platform, but get the browser, get it really good again, get it streamlined.
See, I've got, I don't know, what you could call a controversial view, in that I don't necessarily think it's a bad position for Mozilla to be in for their browser share to be declining, at least not from their goal of making the web better. Because the goal is never for Firefox to take over the web. It's for the web to be an open platform, and a good open platform. And that is the position that makes the web best. And that improves much better when there's several competing standards, all of which are open source, which is exactly what we've got now. Chrome's open source, even Edge is open source now, and Firefox is, and these are all coming together. And the fact that they are more or less equal is actually a fantastic position for the web. And they're actually cooperating together. They're working together on things like WebRTC and the new standards. So actually the web is as open as it's ever been, even though Firefox, perhaps because Firefox is declining in a market share. So yeah, you're right. They do downgrade some stuff in new releases, which is a bit unfortunate.
Yeah, and you're right. It's a good point. But what will happen is if Mozilla loses too much of its influence, it'll get like Android, and Google or whoever will increasingly close up the area that they're dominating. So they have to maintain that kind of influence.
Yeah, but I don't think we're at the point where that's a significant risk, to be honest. I think we're certainly dropping to a certain...
But I mean, things like there are massive memory leaks in Firefox, just leaving TweetDeck open for like a few hours and you have to close Firefox down. The fact that you can't containerize tabs, and this is terrible.
Yeah, that should all be coming in Servo, isn't it?
Yeah.
The upgrade later this year, which is a massive internal rewrite.
Yeah.
That's not... containerizing tabs isn't a small feature, and that's been worked on.
Chrome did it a long time ago, though.
Yeah, but Chrome did it from the ground up. Firefox, it's still
but
based
years
on code
ago.
from
In the meantime,
90s,
Mozilla's had, I don't know, a dozen projects it's taken on and then dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And they've got so much money.
They do have so much money. Yeah, I don't really know what's right. I don't know what I would be spending money on if I was Mozilla.
Neither do I. I would spend a lot of it. I would spend some on lobbying and doing more stuff like that.
Yeah.
Speaking to the British government about their, encryption policies.
Yeah. Or just the British opposition about turning up for debates on their encryption policies.
The meaning of the word opposition.
Yeah. Come on, Corbyn, do something.
He's
going to mutate.
I think the problem with Corbyn opposing the investigatory powers bill is that there's no frame of reference for him in 1972 that he can put that to.
Right, let's move on to some what would have been shocking news a few years ago, but it seems to have become less shocking in the last year, and that is Microsoft releasing software on Linux. In this case, it's their SQL server, and I refuse to call it SQL Server. It's their big database product it's coming to Linux. So we can all upgrade our MySQL databases and Postgres databases to take advantage of this new technology.
It's a bit of a catchphrase. It's huge. This is huge news. It's a massive endorsement for everything that Linux was and has and will become. I can't help being very cynical about, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's business. Microsoft sees an opportunity, and it has bigger threats to worry about than Linux. It's too late for them in many ways in terms of trying to get into the space that Linux now occupies, and the best thing it can do is pile in with us.
I guess the biggest question for every open source user in this release is it a genuine move to support Linux, or is this part of Embrace, Extend, Extinguish? Is this going to pull a load of people into SQL Server and then be like, oh yeah, we're dropping support for Linux in a few years' time?
I don't think it'll be an Extinguish. It'll be something like Oracle Unbreakable Linux, because there's the similar story of them doing their switch based on Debian. And all they have to do really is fork their own version of Linux and just support that. Yeah. That basically may as well be another version of Windows Server.
And then you can sell it to people as the best version of Linux because not the coded in people in their mum's basements Linux. This is a professional Linux.
We've saved them in it. We've saved it.
All the best bits of Linux with the best bits of Microsoft blue chip quality.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, because this is primarily for Azure Cloud, their cloud offering, where they do already support a lot of Linux machines, virtual machines at least, and this is supporting it really is one of Microsoft's flagship products. I mean, it's up there with Office and Windows as a sort of major player in the Microsoft business. And it's a very expensive piece of software to get started in. It's hard to see them gaining much ground in the Linux space, at least.
So people can run that on their own kind of Linux cloud deployments and not have to pay a Microsoft license every time they spin up one of those instances?
Well, you don't have to pay a Microsoft license for the server. Yeah. You do have to for the software. This is, it's not an open source release.
No,
or anything like
but
that.
they must see
Still,
people moving away from Microsoft Server or whatever they happen to be using because they don't have to worry about licensing, or it's a more complex issue with MS licensing.
Yeah, you just can't just hit
Yeah.
virtual machines whenever you want and not worry about the licensing. You have to actually.
Whereas you
think
don't have
about
to
it.
worry about it with Linux, which is
Yeah.
one of the reasons why Linux has been the driving force behind the whole thing anyway.
Yeah, particularly in the cloud, the ability to just not even think about licensing is just fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, obviously not from a commercial perspective. You do, as VMware are finding out, have to think about
Yes. Yeah, but then, yeah. So, I mean, I suppose in this, it isn't all that different from what Microsoft normally does. If it was a change of SQL Server's licensing, that would be a fundamental change in the way that Microsoft does business.
Yeah, I would be very, very suspicious about moving to SQL Server, because even if it's done now in the best spirit, we want to support more platforms. In 5 years' time, if another Steve Ballmer comes in and sees Windows eroding Windows Server's market share, are they going to continue to support their products on a competitor?
But it does bring, if you happen to be running SQL Server, your applications on SQL Server, and you decide to move to Linux, it brings you a step closer to moving towards, whatever other big scaling database.
Yeah, I can definitely see this going the other way. If you're already tied into SQL Server, to have the option to move to Linux might be quite attractive, especially if a lot of your other stack is already on Linux.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really can't see it going the other way. Linux users moving to SQL Server.
No. It's a bit like Microsoft just this week have said that they've added to their Xbox API the ability to play games with people on other networks, i.e. the PlayStation 4. And it's kind of an acceptance that they're losing the battle. And it's pleased by Xbox Ones because you can still play with your PlayStation 4 owning friends. It's like, okay, you can run it on Linux now. Please don't go away completely. Stay with us for a while.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out in the next few years. But yeah, I'm personally not convinced by it. And a final piece of news this fortnight, we're sticking with Microsoft, and they've released their own Linux distribution. This isn't the first time we've announced a Microsoft Linux distribution. You may remember last year they released a distro they're using internally as part of Azure to sort of run network thingies and whatnot. And this is built on it. This is another switch OS, which they're calling Sonic, which stands for Software for Open Networking in the Cloud. It's based on Debian, and it's designed to run in Azure and sort of handle networking whatsits and doodads. It's all on GitHub. You can pick it apart and poke it if you want. And,
what's particularly fascinating is that they obviously couldn't do that in Windows.
Yeah.
It was probably the best case solution, and they probably just thought, oh, to hell with it, we'll just do it in Linux.
Yeah, I mean, that must have been an interesting conversation somewhere along the lines.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't done it in... Maybe they tried to do it using FreeBSD or something more permissive.
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm not sure there wasn't a certain amount of marketing in this. Linux has got a much better brand recognition than the BSDs. Yeah. But again, I'd be suspicious of this. I'm quite a suspicious person, to be fair. So.
Yeah. I think... I don't know. It's natural to be suspicious when I think you've been around the world of Linux for as long as we have, and you've seen what Microsoft has done. But I'm not, a pessimist. I hope that it means that there is a glasnost in the way that Microsoft feels towards Linux.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the pendulum is swinging. I don't feel like it's swung yet.
Yeah.
But and they're still doing quite a lot of not very friendly things.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
there's certainly a certain amount of thaw coming in their attitude to open source, and we'll just have to see what happens. And And that's the news this fortnight.
Excellent. Thanks, Ben. I actually had a couple of emails last time saying how sad and depressed we all sounded talking about privacy and encryption. So we've been able to mostly avoid that. So it's now time for finds of the fortnight or 3 weeks. It just ended that the podcast we should have recorded last week was going to be right on our deadline and we couldn't manage it. So I actually did ask the IRC channel. Let me have a look. Just open it up. Okay, so there's a few finds. Alan Pope, in fact, has said he discovered this week that if you run your system with no swap and memory, pressure gets too much. The K-swap daemon will eat your CPU alive as it tries to swap and make your computer completely unusable. I only configured no swap because I wanted to test the theory that you don't need it, which people keep telling me. Now I have some ammunition to say, yeah, you do. That's true, actually. Lots of people say you don't need swap, and I think that's because lots of us now have lots of RAM, and you don't often hit the swap.
I've used systems with no swap for quite a while and never had issues. It probably just does depend on what you're using it for.
Yeah, I guess if you're using lots of virtual machines or something like that, or whatever happens to start hitting the RAM.
So this came from Alan Pope, you say?
Yes.
He sounds like a fine fellow.
He does. We should speak to him, shouldn't we?
We should interview him for a forthcoming issue of the magazine. We should ask him about Ubuntu.
Yes.
And swap.
Yeah, let's ask him about swap. James Olympus. The one I forgot for the last podcast was fat sort, that is. Some car stereos that read from USB devices use the FAT file system to order tracks rather than something sensible like track numbers. This is true. I've found this.
I've seen that, yeah.
The command FAT source and then device fixes the ordering. So it must reorder the files physically on the file system according to their name.
Can I jump in here with the worst piece of security I've ever seen in a computing device? This is on the stereo in my girlfriend's car. It's got one of those code things that you have to enter if you take the stereo out to stop it being stolen or make it useless if it's on. But it's just a generic stereo. It's nothing fancy. Anyway, I managed to knacker up changing the car battery and that reset the stereo, so I had to put in the code. Turns out the only way to find out what the code is for the stereo is to take the stereo out and it's on the side. There is literally no legitimate use for that in security.
That's terrible. And you shouldn't have said.
How is that good security?
Yeah, that is terrible.
The only security-related thing is I now know how to take stereos out of cars.
Yeah, I've had to do it. I must admit, the time I've done it was with the Renault car, and it wasn't on the side. You had to beg and steal it from Renault. Right, so, and one more from the IRC channel. Devilment says, this is a good find, maybe a bit late. grep-f file 1 file 2, where file 1 contains a list of strings you want to find in file 2. Excellent. I don't think I've ever done that. Although I use grep all the time. Anybody else want to share a find?
I've got a cool find. So apparently, some researcher in Barcelona has found out that you can identify Tor users. So Tor is an anonymizing service, but you can identify Tor users through their through other things such as the patterns of mouse movement and how quickly they use their keyboards. So you can different key presses will have different rhythms of typing and stuff. And this just made me think of the brilliant thing that Cory Doctorow wrote about when he was talking about metadata and how when the Allies when the Brits found the Nazi submarines, it was only metadata that they used. So the idea that metadata is harmless when agencies are collecting it is clearly nonsensical. But apparently the people who would read the German messages before typing them up and passing them to Alan Turing and his other team of other people. Oh, including Asa Briggs as well, who died just yesterday. Apparently he worked at Bletchley. I had no idea, despite having been a fan of his work for a while. So Keira Knightley and Rachel Weisz have got their headphones on and they're listening to the beat Dots and Dashes. And apparently they could identify the German signaller by the style in which he was tapping out these messages. And it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. All that's changed is the degree of complexity, but it is exactly the same. Amazing, absolutely fantastic stuff.
Just to elaborate, the reason that was important in decrypting the Enigma code is because at the start you had to type a random, or supposedly a random few words or few characters. But obviously, humans being humans, they weren't always random. And so the same operators would often use the same words. So I think one would use his girlfriend's name and et cetera, et cetera. So if you could identify the operator, you could look at the words they'd used previously, which had been broken brute force, and narrow it down.
Oh, okay, it's not the same thing then. Never mind.
No, but it is because you get the context to be able to get more data out of it.
Yeah.
It is.
So once they know who you are, they can put it into context and know exactly, if they're looking at you for other reasons.
Right. But I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
Not Linux specific, but Linux is, it's becoming more and more apparent that Linux is going to be at the front line of any citizen-led fight back against intrusive governments. You're not going to be able to, all the stuff that's illegal, you're not going to be able to do it on an Apple or a Microsoft device, are you?
Although, to be fair to, is it Apple, or is it Google, Facebook, and Apple have all said they're going to start ramping up their encryption in response to the. That still means that you've got no guarantee.
Yeah.
Edward Snowden, in fact, said this is a silly conversation. There are already backdoors in iOS.
Yeah, and if the Snoopers Charter passes, they can't legally do it.
No, and I can see we're slipping back into depressing conversations about security.
Okay, well, let's move on from this depression and go to my second discovery, which again is not really a find or a discovery, but on Monday I went to a discussion with Val McDermid. It was Val McDermid in conversation in front of an audience at the York Literature Festival. And she was talking about all sorts of fantastic, interesting stuff. And at the end, there was some free booze, and I walked away from it.
Ooh.
I know. I don't know whether that's good or bad.
I'm speechless.
Well, I felt wrong on the inside. It was terrible.
What was the booze?
It was wine. It was red wine and white wine, and it was at the venue was St Peter's School in York, which has annual boarding fees of £27,000 a year. So it was probably very good stuff.
From St Peter himself.
The Rock.
If I was paying £27,000 a year for my children to go to school, I'd want them to get good wine.
Yeah. That's it. That's all I found.
Thanks, Andrew. That was good. I must visit York again.
It's coming out of its winter hibernation now. I can see blue sky. It hasn't rained for like 4 days.
Well, shall I go next? Because I haven't really found anything much. I've been too busy. But I did use Deepin, the distro that's sponsored by China. And I was hugely impressed. I hadn't used it before. I'd seen Ben had written about it, and I was doing a thing on desktops. And I installed it. You can only install it. You can't run it very easily live. But it looks fabulous. Really nice desktop. And it's got its own suite of applications. It's now based on Debian, I think. I think it's flirted with a few Debian, then Ubuntu, then back to Debian, dpackage and apt. But it's got, unlike a lot of desktops and distributions, it's got a lot of its own kind of forked software. So the main thing is it's got a really nice single settings and configuration panel that slides in from the right-hand side of the desktop that presents every option that you can change on the desktop. And then the bottom really is a very simplistic panel launcher. And then there's some great file manager, music, photo apps that come along with it. And we used to say this about Mint, and then what was it? Was it Kino or some of those things that really looked Apple-like? I think it would really impress people if they were used to Apple products if you put Deepin in front of them. It's better than OS X, which I know nobody thinks is much of a big deal, but I was hugely impressed anyway for what I considered an esoteric distribution.
Yeah, I remember using it probably 5 years ago now, and it was then it was basically a reskinned version of Ubuntu, but it had a few additional apps. And it was one of the first Linux distros to have a really good software center.
Oh yeah, it's like an app store. It's really nice.
Yeah, and they did that a long time ago. The only issue then was all the reviews were in Chinese, so I didn't understand what anyone was saying. I guess that just reflects the user base. But I was looking, actually, when I was researching for the Linux Foundation news that we were talking about last podcast or the podcast before, I noticed that Deepin are a member of the Linux Foundation, which obviously costs quite a bit of cash. So they're the company behind it.
Were they gold members or platinum members?
They were one of the lower down members. But
how much is it? $100,000 for a gold membership, Graham?
Yes, it is. And $500,000 for the platinum membership, friends.
Yeah. And for that, you don't have to comply with the GPL.
No. And we'll get rid of individual membership and individual representation on the board. They should have a right to reply to this, really. So if Jim Zemlin wants to get in touch, he's more than welcome to.
Shall I go with mine?
Yeah, sorry, that was all my find was, really.
I found a few things this fortnight, actually. A couple of them are sort of related. I was in a situation where I wanted to be able to upload pictures from my camera to the internet. It's a pretty common situation. You can do it in various ways. Take your SD card out, plug it in. But I came across Flash Air, which is a device by Toshiba, and I think there are a few competitors as well, which is an SD card with a built-in ARM, essentially an ARM computer with a Wi-Fi stack running on it. And you can program it in Lua. So I've now got an SD card that scans the file system every few seconds anyway. When it finds a new file, it FTPs it up to my web server by connecting to an access point on my mobile phone and pushing it through. And all this is in just an SD card.
Isn't that what a computer's for?
Well, yeah, but it's a computer inside my camera.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry. Yeah, I forgot that. Yes.
So everything running. Yeah, click a picture on the camera and uploads it through my phone.
That is amazing, actually. Yeah, sorry, I forgot that you'd got it plugged into the camera when it was doing that.
Yeah, and the related find is iNotify Wait, which is running on the server, which is a command that if you use it with the M flag, you can just monitors a directory, and whenever a new file appears or is changed, it outputs something that you can pipe into a while loop. So I've now got a command on my server that processes every image as soon as it's taken.
Ah.
Well, I say as soon as it's taken, a few seconds after, obviously. This isn't instant. I'm now click an image on my camera and my server processes it.
That's cool. You've just reminded me, actually, OwnCloud 9 was released last week, and I updated my system to OwnCloud 9, and it's a really nice upgrade. In particular, what you've just reminded me is that you could always share photos with other people, but now those other people who you just share the photos with can leave comments, like on Facebook or on Google+, but all within your own OwnCloud environment, and it's really good.
Yeah, cool.
And tag them. You can tag them, which you couldn't before.
And one more find that was sent to me by a chap called Dave Allen, and Dave is a Google Mail user, and one of the things he wanted to do is find the largest files in his Gmail inbox so he could delete them, process them, etc., etc. And I don't use Gmail, but apparently you don't have the option to do that for some reason because the almighty Google says no. So his find is that there's a spreadsheet that you can just import into Google Sheets, which will pull all the data from your Gmail account and sort it by size.
Yeah.
That's really, really useful find, because I've wanted to do the same thing, just clear out old big attachments, but without downloading the whole mail locally. So brilliant find, that.
Excellent.
Which I guess just leaves me then.
Yeah.
My find is an article from the Süddeutsche Zeitung, so Germany's the biggest newspaper here in the south of Germany. And this article appeared on the 8th of March. And it hasn't been covered anywhere, as far as I can see, in the English language press yet. But fortunately, we have a crack team of Linux journalists based in South Germany, so we were able to look at it. I'm just going to give you a few quotes from it. The title is "Unpublished Study Depicts Terrible State of Munich City Council's IT Infrastructure."
Hang on. If it's an unpublished study, how can they publish it?
Well, you have to ask Süddeutsche Zeitung. I am merely the messenger. They and some other quotes are: consulting company Accenture has examined the infrastructure and found major problems. Workers are complaining of entire departments being shut down. There's general support for the reform of IT in Munich, but the problems were massively underestimated. Only 55% of workers in the city's departments are happy with the IT setup they use. And this is why I bring this up. This is the key thing from the article. It is not primarily about Linux, but rather problems with coordination across 15,000 PCs. Now again, this has not been picked up in English language media. It is not, the problems in Munich are not about Linux. Now, how many websites and other journals reported that Munich was moving away from Linux late last year? Remember that?
Yeah.
Some websites, I'm not going to name them, and I'm not going to accuse them of lying, but they said, oh, Munich's giving up Linux and going back to Windows. That was never on the cards. And now we have some very specific information saying the problems are not about Linux. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt going on about there. Munich's having trouble with Linux. You shouldn't switch to Linux. It's causing problems. No, it's because it's badly organized, badly coordinated, and it's not primarily about Linux.
They said that in their study, 50% of the people were satisfied with the computer system.
Yeah.
I'd imagine that's amazingly high based on the satisfaction I've seen in corporate IT systems.
Well, quite possibly.
I'd imagine about 10 to 20% is usual.
Yeah. I thought a similar thing with that figure. Given that they're talking about the scale of the problems, you would expect that to be much lower. But maybe it's like some departments are working flawlessly and some departments are just closing down all the time. But I hope this information gets out there instead of just this general perception that, oh, migrating to Linux has screwed up Munich and blah, blah, blah. This is very, very important news. And that was my find.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone. They were our fights.
Now we come to our 80% of the way through reminder. Still to come, there may be neurons, and there will definitely be a voice of the masses. If you have enjoyed this podcast and would like to buy our magazine, go to shop.linuxvoice.com and subscribe. We do EPUBs and PDFs that don't have any DRM at all. And there's no DRM in the paper version either.
Great, so let me just shuffle through the neurons here to count up how many we have. And we have 0.
I was going to say, have we got as many neurons as AlphaGo? But I guess the answer is no.
Or emulated neurons. So no neurons this episode, but as always, if anybody wants their musings read out live on air, then email me, mike@linuxvoice.com.
Lovely. So what we have now is the voice of the masses, in which we asked the blatantly rhetorical question, should we fear AI? Of course we should fear AI. We should be terrified. Cowering under our rich mahogany desks.
Can we all go and get another cup of tea now?
Do you want to go get another cup of tea now?
No, that's a joke.
That's the most British response to it I've ever seen. I'm scared.
Yes, other tea drinking nations are available. So, of course, the human engineers at Google have created a computer that can beat another human at Go. It's not just that the computer has, although the computer has shown some learning, which is what makes it such a crazy, awesome breakthrough. This is, could be useful for self-driving cars, natural language interfaces. However, Stephen Hawking is a bit scared. He says success in creating AI would be the biggest event in human history. Unfortunately, it might also be the last.
For us, but maybe not for intelligence.
I don't know. I don't identify as intelligent. I just want to just do my own thing, bimble about. So let's get on with the comments, of which there are only 12. So Raywood says, "Look to the past. Always a good start. He who controls the past controls the present," and all that. When automation came in, we dreamt of an idealised world of leisure. Reality has given us a world where people work just as hard and under more stressful conditions. The rich get richer and the poor get a few stops thrown to them. Specifically, I wouldn't trust a thinking machine unless it had an effective, non-defended off switch readily to hand. Right, that's a big unless, clearly. Didn't Keynes predict that we'd all be working just 3 hours a day by now?
Yeah.
Silly Keynes, what did he know? Mark Johnson says...
Interestingly, he got the technology right. He got the automation part right. He just thought that somehow, the wealth would be equally distributed and we could all,
He thought that the wealth would be shared. What a fool.
A mistake that he...
Yeah, he didn't look to the past, did he?
He knew nothing.
Some people are actually working 3/5 or 4, none, not at all.
So Mark Johnson of Oddcamp fame says, "As a software developer, I for one welcome our new robot overlords, as someone's got to program them. I don't think the rise of the machines is something to be concerned about right now. What we're seeing is devices and programs that perform specific niche tasks very well, not self-aware ever minds. What does concern me is that we're creating devices increasingly capable of replacing humans for simple tasks. I don't consider this to be a bad thing, quite the opposite, but our society isn't geared up for a world where we don't need those people to work." No.
I think this is a really good point that he makes, and that it's not necessarily... Artificial intelligence is going to take a lot of jobs over the next 20 or 30 years, and we've come to... For some reason, we've agreed as a society that everyone should have to work 40 hours a week, but there's no reason for that. It's entirely arbitrary that we've sort of drawn out a hat. If computers can do it, why can't we all work 3 hours a week? Why can't we work 20 hours a week? And we need to have a setup that allows for a situation where not as many people need to work. Because it's pointless just making busy work for people or chastising them for being unemployed when there's absolutely no point in them doing the jobs because computers can do them. And I don't know what the proper solution to this is, but we as a society need to gear up for the fact that technology is making a lot of jobs redundant. We should, Keynes was wrong that we're not working 3 hours a day, but why aren't we? All our basic needs could be met if every person met 3 hours a week. I mean, it takes far fewer farmers to grow the food we need. Today, it takes far fewer people to run the infrastructure. Why not make the standard working week less or take the pressure off people? But for some obscure reason, we're working more and more when in reality we need to work less.
It's money though, isn't it? Because we need increasing amounts of money to get mortgages and nobody's prepared to pay you the same for one day. But I think it is really interesting what you're saying, because maybe the problem is that humans still need to do something. It isn't a solution to say you only have to work one day. What are you going to do on those extra 5 days or 6 days?
Play Frontier.
I'm sure I could find something. Play Frontier.
Humans aren't happy like that, are they? You actually I think most of us actually have to do something and feel like we're contributing to something. So what's going to take its place? We can't all watch Jeremy Kyle.
Well, yeah, some people have to be on.
Some people have to be Jeremy Kyle.
And you say that we need more and more money for things like this, but all this amount of money, it's kind of artificial, really. I mean, the price of food is as a proportion of income, is dropping massively, and especially if you consider the sort of basic foods, not the sort of what you could term luxury foods, which are increasing. But the price of what you need to sustain yourself is absolutely minuscule compared to how many hours of minimum wage you need to earn to feed yourself for a week. It's tiny. Things like mortgages, you're right. The price of housing is going up, but it's only going up because of people have the money to pay for it. If suddenly we said, all right, everyone's going to earn half what they are, house prices drop, mortgages would drop, and there's nothing fundamentally expensive about.
I like what you're saying. I like specifically talking about food because this is kind of what I presume led to hunter-gatherers and to settlements and everything. Food being the amount of energy you expend to keep yourself alive, and the fact that we've maybe reached a point where that is now irrelevant almost.
Yeah. It's one of my personal bugbears when people complain about the price of food. Food is ridiculous. It's obscenely cheap food in the UK. Food is cheaper in the UK than it is, I used to live in Tanzania where the average wage was less than $1 a day. And somehow people manage to feed families on that. People, it is not expensive to eat. If you want to eat pomegranate quinoa salad with organic wild salmon, then
you can tell you've moved to Bristol.
But only because you're paying for stuff that's a luxury brand that has no real sustenance need. The price of getting tasty, nutritious food.
Food has got more expensive in the last few years, though. It's a tiny tick upwards in an otherwise downward trend. But people don't think in terms of the last 200 years, do they? No one's counting their change in Tesco going, oh, this is much cheaper than it was 200 years ago. They're thinking, oh, this is more expensive than it was last month.
The price of food increased? I haven't noticed. The basics going up. Your rice, your flours, your beans, your onions. They haven't gone up significantly. Maybe maybe it now takes an hour at minimum wage to feed yourself for a week on basic food rather than 45 minutes on minimum wage.
But that's a 33% increase then. That's a massive difference.
But it's also a 15-minute a week increase. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying people shouldn't do
I'm not saying people shouldn't
do organic free-range salmon. But accept that that's your choice to spend the money on it, not a fundamental fact of food being expensive.
It's really,
But that's...
I didn't anticipate the conversation going this way at all. I think it's fascinating.
But sorry, that's just one of my personal bugbearers.
I think you're right. And I think this is the problem with their artificial intelligence and things becoming automated is this. It's nothing to do with the computers themselves.
Yeah, and it is. And to a certain extent, it's also, I don't know what's causing it, but we sort of seem to feel we need more than we did 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago. I mean, the standard of living of someone on what we would now consider a low income is comparable to the nobility 100 years ago. In terms of the things they have, you basically, most people aren't cold anymore. You put the central heating on and it warms up, and you might think, oh, I'd like to have it a bit higher or a bit lower. But you're not cold. That's a massive luxury that only existed in probably our parents' lifetime. And, and now we just expect to be able to carry a supercomputer in our pockets. It's madness, really. And it's because we have these massive expectations of what life should be like that we find ourselves working all these hours when there's no purpose for it.
Yeah.
We've got sucked into this idea of progress, and the only reason you can progress is almost by definition working more than you need to. It's the spare capacity that allows us to move forwards rather than staying the same. And this progress is accelerating because we have more spare capacity to put into it. But there's no reason. It's not fundamental to human happiness. We're not getting happier because we're having all these things. We're not enjoying life more because we're having all these things. Just let the robots do it and chill out.
I'd vote for you, Ben.
My mind has been blown.
Let's make America great again.
I'm pretty sure that's what Mark Johnson reckoned.
Okay, so Shadow Firebird says, there's nothing to be afraid of as yet because we are nowhere near actual science fiction AI. Current use of the term is a preposterous marketing spin. Yes, of course it is. How relevant is it really that a computer can beat a human at some game. Used to describe systems that with better algorithms or are good at processing large volumes of data. The time to worry is when we are actively trying to create self-aware programs. Early research in the area is mostly no longer being done, and right now we can't even define intelligence. Yes. Sure, let's talk about machine ethics now, but worry, no. Francesco Turco brings it back to the streets and says, in my opinion, the short-term risk of artificial intelligence is greater unemployment and inequality. I don't know if it's possible to solve unemployment, but it's certainly possible to solve inequality. Just create a basic living income for all and set a maximum income limit. Easy. Also, I don't think we really get artificial intelligence unless the software is free as in freedom. Proprietary artificial intelligence programs don't count.
I think a point quite a few people have made about it not really being intelligent at the moment, I think is completely valid. We are just solving a few tasks, and we don't know what intelligence is. It's just something that we sort of. I think it's one of those things that everyone defines to mean what they're good at. So if you're good at maths, you always seem to think intelligent people are good at maths. If you're good at poetry, you seem to think that's a definition of intelligence. I've no idea because I'm not good at anything.
I don't think the open source part is particularly relevant because the infrastructure is going to be owned by so few people, at least to start off with, and that's the thing that will do the most in artificial intelligent number crunching.
Yeah.
Okay. Raphael says, I don't like the idea of self-driving cars. I don't want to relinquish my freedom. No, I don't either. But then we cling to lots of silly things in the name of freedom.
I think self-driving cars increase your freedom. You're free to have a drink and go home.
Hey, all those pubs. We should invest in country pubs.
Yeah. Yeah. That's thinking outside the box.
How much have we got in the tin? Let me see. There's at least 20 quid here. What we got here?
Proper all-nighters in your car drives you home. That's what you want.
Yeah, there's a lovely pub in Avon that's just awkward to get to, and you can sit by the river. There's a viaduct overhead and a little, quite fast-running river underneath. You can sit on the banks and they do some cracking ciders.
The beer's awful there.
I don't know anything about beer anymore.
I'm not investing in a pub with Ben as my business partner. It's just doomed to failure.
But it's in the West Country. Who drinks beer in the West Country?
That's right. Cater only for natives. Ignore the masses of people moving there for all of the other reasons. No, self-driving cars won't be happening outside of towns anytime soon, even assuming they take off in towns, because in order for them to work, the current requirement is for meter-precise this-week mapping. Says Shadow Firebird. Kevin O'Brien, I predict a large number of answers containing the phrase, I for one welcome our robot overlords. And I do, in fact, look forward to the advances this will bring. Self-driving cars would be awesome, but even more, I think we could take advantage of AI in things like medical diagnosis, where we already have evidence that the AIs do better than the doctors. That would solve the junior doctors issue, but do nothing for unemployment.
Yeah. Maybe this is Jeremy Hunt's plan all along.
Maybe Jeremy Hunt is actually our new robot overlord. Oh dear.
Actually, that wouldn't surprise me.
Rakios says, I'd be inclined to look forward to artificial intelligence as a pleasant surprise, a pleasant change from natural stupidity. But I'm inclined to think that the same old people will still be in charge. Yep. Also, no matter how intelligent a system, it's still prey to the same old GIGO phenomenon. Which that is...
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, I was going to say something in, something out. Yeah.
I've always known that by a less polite acronym.
Yeah, me too. That's why I was a bit confused. So, what's... Mike, you live in a land of... robotic order, precision, punctuality. How would artificial intelligence change your life?
Well, you've got to bear in mind that Elon Musk has said that he's concerned about artificial intelligence, and I've simply stopped having opinions and I simply follow everything he says. So that's my position. I mean, it's 2016, having other opinions than Elon Musk. I mean, come on, guys.
Is Elon Musk actually artificially intelligent?
Let's see when the Falcon Heavy launches.
Yeah.
Well, like pretty similarly, now that Tony Benn's died, I don't know what to think anymore. So, don't know. Graham?
Well, I think it's a pretty easy line to draw on the way that things are going. I think it'll mostly be a massive help. It'll help, surgeons perform incredibly complex operations in the same way that it kind of helps pilots fly through difficult conditions, less human error, which human error is the big killer for everything. I don't know. I read Isaac Asimov's Robots at an early age, and that stayed with me. I think that's one where the robots kind of create their own they become sentient and create their own versions of themselves to such an extent that they become way more intelligent than humans. And I think that will probably happen too. I don't think. But it's difficult not to verge into science fiction. I don't think there's a science fiction nightmare in this, apart from putting artificial intelligence into robots and sending the robots off to fight the wars that we don't want to get involved in.
Well, robots, it's not such a big leap to imagine artificial intelligence in drones.
No, yeah, you're right.
I was going to say, we're already sending robots off to fight wars we don't want to get involved in. We just like not to talk about it.
I mean, at the moment, when when a wedding party gets blown up rather than a bunch of Al Qaeda, it's an error. It's a failure of intelligence, or it's a human error. If that decision were made by a program, would that be ethically massively different? I don't know. I just don't know.
I would be amazed if the targets for the drone strikes aren't being picked out by AI. I'm almost certain that they are.
Probably being, like the data must be filtered by AI, but surely a human being would have the final say.
Possibly, but does the human being having the final say care? They're going to be someone sat in Texas or sat in, I don't know where they sit in the UK, just a regular grunt who just flies around like it's a computer game, because that's what they're trained to do.
And essentially, this is my problem with our data and privacy, is that I do think that, behavior will be analysed in the same way Google analyses our data for advertising potential. And all they need to do is keep feeding back into that mechanism, and it loses accountability and our own sense of ruling our own kind of democracy or doing what we think is right. That's not really artificial intelligence, though.
Right. Let's finish off with two final comments. One from Mads. That's not a question, that's 3. Should we fear AI? To which he responds, would it help? Question 2. Is it growing too powerful too quickly for us to comprehend the risks we're taking? To which the answer is yes. And is the rise of the machines a genuine concern or just the stuff of science fiction? To which the answer is the first one. I think we need more specific scenarios to discuss rather than just AI. #Skynet isn't really helpful. No, but it is cool. Come on. You just say the word Skynet.
How often do you get to do it?
You think of that clanging. Are we concerned for our jobs? Are we concerned for societal equality and cohesion? Are we worried that people will only interact with machines by natural language and so no longer require Ben's excellent Pi project tutorials? And let's give the final word to President Obama, who says, as Franklin D. Roosevelt, 32nd President of the United States, once said, there is nothing to fear but fear itself. AI is simply the next evolutionary step in technology, and it won't be the last. Embrace it. Let's make IT great again.
Are we sure it was President Obama that said that?
That's what he said. That's what the name is. So there we go. Sounds like we should fear AI, not because it's going to kill us, but because it's going to make us all unemployed.
No, we should embrace it because it's going to make us all unemployed, and we only need £2.50 to live on.
Yeah, just chill out and let the robots do it.
Just chill out on your however much Ben thinks you need to feed yourself. Ah dear, I don't know. Are we already ruled by AI?
Probably. Right.
God, we've turned this into another downer again, haven't we? So our next voice of the masses must be, what's the most epically awesome thing ever, and then we can chat about unicorns and rainbows and stuff.
To finish on a slightly positive note, I'm certain as well. Somebody mentioned healthcare, and I think AI, and especially it's something where the NHS is incredibly well placed to take advantage of, because it should be in a place where it's capturing lots of data and it's not run by big companies that are going to profit off it. I know that it is in parts and it's fragmenting. That's not what I'm saying, but in the right place with the right kind of algorithms, I think AI can make huge leap forwards in what ails us and improving our lives and improving people's health and improving our future.
Similarly, I think self-driving cars are a massive advantage. I think driving ourselves is one of those things future generations will look back on and be like, why the hell did you do that? That's crazy dangerous.
It is. And also terribly inefficient.
Yeah, and just stressful and unpleasant. Yeah. Just imagine you have to sit back and read a book or watch a film rather than having to drive yourself to work.
Yeah, but your boss will expect you to work in the drive to work, not getting all negative again.
But does that mean you can include your commute in your regular hours, so you won't need to leave your house until 9?
Quick, let's end the podcast. Quick.
Right, that's enough of that. See you again next fortnight. I've been Andrew Gregory, and these are the three that just don't really matter anymore. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.